everybody, welcome back. So today I'm going to finish up my wrap up for June. These are the last 14 books that I read. I have my other video over there, so if you want to see the other ones that I read, you can look there. And these are the ones that I liked more, I guess. Those are the ones that were my least favorite. These are the ones that are more of my favorite, and there's 14 of them. So, and I rate my books on a 10-point scale instead of a 5-point scale because I think that it gives me a little bit more range and I can decide how much I like things or don't like things. First one I'm going to go over is called Soulsmith. This is by Will Wright. This is the second book in the Cradle series. This is about a boy who is born in this village where everyone has some kind of ability, but he does not. So he is called an unsouled. And he's kind of like the bottom of the community, and everybody feels like they have to take care of him because he's basically weak and can't do anything. He discovers that he's not as weak as everyone says he is, and ability to achieve what he wants to achieve is much more than what they thought. So he goes on a journey, and he's learning how to get past the disadvantage that he has and be as good as everyone else. We'll say better than everyone else. So this is a fun series. I'm enjoying it. Me and my kids are listening to it on Audible, and I gave this one 8 out of 10 stars. So next I read some mangas, and I read the One Punch Man number 10 and number 11, and this is by, well, it's a pseudonym, it just says it's by One, and this is about a superhero who can kill anything with one punch, and as funny as it sounds, because he's so overpowered, like, I really like him. He's a great character because there was a sacrifice that came with him becoming who he was. And these ones now, they have other heroes that they're not as overpowered, and so they have to fight monsters too, and those are some really fun battles and things. So I am really enjoying the series. I like Saitama. He's the main character, and he tries to be the best superhero, and, he doesn't have a problem killing monsters, but he doesn't seem to care about the monsters, but it's just the things that he does care about sometimes just make it hilarious. So I recommend this series. It's a lot of fun if you like manga. So and I gave those ones 8 out of 10. So the next ones, again, these are the other 4 manga, and these are the Komi Can't Communicate. I read number 5 and number 6. And this is by Tomohito Ada. So this is about a girl who has a communication disorder. She has horrible social anxiety, and everybody at school actually likes her. They think she's like the greatest kid in school, but nobody will be friends with her because they think she's so much better than them. And this is about how she goes about trying to make 100 friends. And I think this series is really good, and even like therapeutically as a therapist, I would recommend this to teenagers and things like that, because it talks about so many of the things that they face when they're in school and when they're interacting with other teens, and the struggle that it takes to make friends. So I gave this one also 8 out of 10. Next book was called Sin Eater by Megan Campisi, and this was a historical fiction about a woman who was caught stealing food, so they made her the Sin Eater for the town. So basically she has to, whenever somebody dies or gets close to death, she asks them about all their sins, and then they provide her with a meal that is representative of all the sins that they committed. It's kind of a mystery because she's being taught by the older Sin Eater, and they go into the royal, the castle. They have to eat the sins of one of the royalty, and there's a deer heart that they have to eat, and the person never confessed those sins. So she's trying to figure out what this means, because she's new at this, doesn't understand what it means, what all of the different foods mean, because she's kind of an apprentice. But the older Sin Eater refuses to eat it, and so now she is thrust into the role of being a Sin Eater. and she's trying to figure out what this heart represents. So it was a lot of fun, and it learned a lot about history and sin eaters, which were really a thing in certain parts of the world. But the next one was Promise of Blood history. I gave this one 8.5 out of 10. By Brian McClellan. This is the first book in the Powder Mage trilogy. I will say it didn't disappoint. The name of the book, it lived up to it. There was lots of blood. And this is a military fantasy. I think it's considered flintlock. They have guns and things. And the mages snort gunpowder, and it puts them into a magical trance where they can control bullets and things like that. However, they're not considered the most powerful magic people. And there's some gods that some people are trying to wake up, which I guess is going to change the entire world. There's kind of a siege in it. There's a lot of battles and a lot of blood. So it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I will be continuing the series. I gave it 8.5 out of 10. The next one is the 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin. This is the first book in the Inheritance trilogy. This is about a girl and her mother dies, and when her mother dies, she's whisked away to the palace and told that, she has to kind of compete to be the next in line for the throne. And she's kind of trying to unsolve the mystery of why her mother left and why she's now in this situation. And she's kind of at a loss. She wasn't trained for this or prepared for this at all. Didn't kind of know that this was her history. And so she's kind of trying to figure all of that out. I think this is considered like a science fiction fantasy mix. Anyway, really enjoyed that one too. I gave it 8.5 out of 10. Next was Dumplin by Julie Murphy. And this was really great. This was a young adult contemporary romance, which is not a genre I would normally pick up or like, but I really enjoyed this one. It's about a girl who considers herself the fat girl of the town. Her name is Willadine. Her mother is this former beauty queen, and the biggest thing in this town every year is the beauty pageant that they have. So she kind of decides that she's going to defy her mother and enter the beauty contest, even though she's overweight and she doesn't feel like she's beautiful. And she kind of does just to upset and piss off her mom, and she ends up inspiring the whole town. So this one I really liked, and I gave it 8.5 out of 10. The next one was Wizardborn by David Farland, and this is the third book in the Rune Lords series. And this is a fantasy series where you have what you call Rune Lords, and they take attributes from other people. So if you want to be smart, you take the wit from someone else. If you want to be beautiful, you take the glamour of someone else. Those people actually have to give it to you willingly. And there's always all sorts of ways to manipulate people into giving you those things. So I am really enjoying this series. This was, like I said, the third one, and it just keeps getting really, really good. I am really into this. This is becoming one of my favorite fantasy series this year. And highly recommend it. It's great. And I gave that one 9 out of 10. Next is Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. This is the third book in the Farseer trilogy. I really like this trilogy. The end was probably not my favorite, but this is much more like a character-driven series where you follow Fitz, and he's the bastard son of the king in waiting, and it's kind of like all of his adventures. He's forced to be an assassin. He doesn't want to be an assassin. And so I guess in other assassin stories where it's just all about them killing people and whatnot, this one is really much more about his inner struggle to decide who and what he wants to be. Really enjoyed it. Gave this one 9 out of 10 stars. Next is Shadowplay by Tad Williams. This is the second book in the Shadow March series. There's 4 books in the series, and this follows a set of twins, but these twins are the royalty. They are supposed to rule this kingdom, but now the kingdom has become overrun and they are on the run. There's a lot of people trying to take the throne from them, but there's also the fairies who are coming to take their land back because there was a war between the humans and the Fae lost and they were driven off, and now they're coming back to claim what was theirs. Is there political intrigue where they're trying to maintain their rule and their throne and their kingdom, but they're also fighting an almost unstoppable foe that for the Fae it doesn't mean anything because most of them can live forever, or some of them can live forever, so they've waited until nobody knows about them anymore or knows how to fight them anymore. So I'm really enjoying it. Again, this is a great fantasy series. Gave it 9.5 out of 10. Next one was Carve the Mark by Veronica Roth. And this is the first book in the Carve the Mark series. It's a duology. This is a young adult science fiction fantasy. And this is about a girl who can inflict pain just by touching somebody, and to the degree that she can kill them if she wants to. And her brother is trying to use her to rule this kingdom, and she decides she's not going to play ball anymore, and she's not going to do what he wants no matter what he does. But he does know secrets about her that can be very damaging to her. But there's what they call the fates, and the fates can tell you something important about your life, and that's something that's going to happen. And so her brother knows who's going to kill him, and he's trying to prevent that, even though it's his fate and there's no way for him to prevent it, or maybe there is, I don't know, but he's trying to find a way to beat the fates. So the last book, favorite book of the month, was The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. And this is a classic story of revenge. And it was extremely long. It was like 1,200 or 1,300 pages. But it was amazing. Like, I loved it. I loved almost every moment of it. The characters were rich. The adventure was great. Intricacies of this story were just, like, blew me away. I love classics. They tell so much. Like, all the stories that you read in classics are the ones that we still tell now. Everything is like a retelling of them. And this one was amazing. And even as long as it was, like, I wasn't bored. It took me a long time to read because it was so long. So it takes a long time to read. And you really have to pay attention, because if you're not really paying attention, then you're going to miss something that becomes important later on. So anyway, this is about a man who was falsely imprisoned by his friends so his friend could marry his fiancée, and he escapes from prison, finds a fortune, and decides he's going to exact revenge on all the people who sent him to prison. It was awesome. Gave it 10 out of 10. So those are all the books that I read this month. And if you like the video, please like and subscribe. I put new videos out on Tuesdays and Thursdays. This is the end of part 2.